I've got my water here because there's a lot to cover. You know what it is, from my 10 years of DIY and sewing on YouTube, I have somehow decided I am fully justified in ranking Met Gala looks by sewing difficulty. The Met Gala for many is the Fashion Olympics. It's the opportunity to witness some of the best in haute couture. So we are completely within our right to hope and expect and witness fashion precision, technique, dedication, skill, all manifested on a finished item. I'm gonna try to keep my personal taste out of this and just focus on sewing technique and difficulty. But with that being said, the first tier, I feel like I need to explain these, is gonna be past the seam ripper. RIP. This is you maybe let your intrusive thoughts take over during the sewing process. Something about the look makes me feel bad for the fabric, feel bad for the machine, feel bad for the expert who worked on it. No shade. I think all I'm saying is all of them deserve better. I feel like this is going to become a catch-all for like a wide variety of sewing difficulty, but all I'm saying is I don't think this is a finished item. But let's get focused on actual sewing difficulty. The bottom tier is going to be you're having delusions of DIY, and what I mean by that is if I am maybe feeling a little too confident, a little delusional, there's like a part of my brain that could trick myself into thinking I could DIY that. I'm not saying whether or not that's true. I will clarify for the last time, I have utmost respect for everyone who works really hard on these garments, and their years of effort, skill level, I will assume far exceeds mine. But if you're putting all this expensive material and time and expertise into making something, it should not look slightly arts and crafts and slightly beginner friendly. Does that make sense? Fashion school fundamentals. This is just like middle of the road. You're here, everything fits well. You obviously went to fashion school, but there's nothing that makes me think like you cried while sewing this. I mean, there probably is a lot of crying in fashion school, but the next tier is for blood, sweat, tears, 30-minute timer. Let me explain myself. I think from back when I made my own wedding dress, there was this kind of fun fact that stuck with me, which is the people working on the lace for Kate Middleton's wedding dress had a system where every 30 minutes they had to wash their hands in order to preserve the pristine whiteness of the wedding dress. You were aiming for perfection. You definitely shed blood, sweat, tears in the process, but you kept them to yourself because the blood, sweat, tears was not actually allowed to touch the garment. And lastly, fairy godmother. All I'm saying here is when I look at the finished garment, it's easier for me to believe that a fairy godmother made it than the actual human hands that did. There's something about it that just, I see the swirling wand and the dancing sparkles, and you emerge transformed. There has to be some deal where it disappears at midnight. It's just too good to be true. Let's begin. I tried to dress on theme. If you guys remember the video where these fingerless lace gloves came from, this is a gift from a family member, and then this pearl necklace, drop it in the comments if you remember. First up, we have Alexa Chung. I admit I don't quite get this outfit, but it is a bit like babyish with the bonnet. However, when we zoom in, we can start appreciating some sewing skills. The shirring and gathering that caused this satiny fabric to create these floating 5-petal flowers. I actually think the execution is pretty sublime. And then the shirring continued down the dress all the way into this flowing satin at the bottom. Ribbons are part of this, lace is part of this. For the number of different materials that went into it, it's surprisingly cohesive. I can picture myself crying while trying to attempt to make this. 30-minute timer. Next is Amanda Seyfried and Cartier, and so I think in this case it's more about the jewels than actual fashion design and sewing. Oh, I'm like uncomfortable actually putting things in the tiers that I created, but I think this is delusions of DIY. When you go to the bead store, the beads are often sold literally in these chains. I can see my brain thinking, oh, maybe I can make that. I don't think I could. It's Anita. The two most notable sewing techniques going into this, I would say, is the draping that gives us all this crisscrossing satin in the front, as well as some structural additions to give it the floating over here. Honestly, quite beautiful. When I zoom in, I feel like I have to put on my fashion school instructor glasses and nitpick that the satin in this chest area is just like not gelling with me. It looks like it's getting twisted. I think this thing over here is cool, but I don't quite get why from a direction standpoint. Fashion school fundamentals. Coming down the carpet next is Anne Hathaway. The use of the tweed material is definitely a nod to Chanel, and then the golden pins is a nod to Versace, which is the designer of the dress. Tweed is a woven material, but in a very 3D way that makes it seem like it's instantly suitable for outerwear or suiting, and so I'm actually really impressed how clean and not heavy it looks as a form-fitting garment. There's these very precious flowers that are resting over the bust. It's super smooth, the shaping to fit it to the body. I think there's mesh holding together the gaps as well as the pins. This is a draping nightmare for a material that basically has no stretch, so I'm actually also even impressed that the sleeve has such a good fit. Last night when I reviewed all of these, I think I put it in fashion school fundamentals, but I'm gonna give it 30-minute timer. Ooh, a knock yai. Let's talk about sequins. Sequined fabric almost always necessitates that you will be hand sewing. And the reason is because it is a lot of layers of plastic and pretty hard to pass through a sewing machine in any kind of clean and nice looking way. The gradient from like tiny sequins down to larger sequins, I feel very sure that's all done by hand. And then on top of that, it's a gradient of gold to silver. So there's a lot of artful placement going on that makes it look like magical fish scales. The dripping of the fine pearls, it's like delicate rainfall. And then I think this is kind of an underappreciated detail, but the gloves and the train, it's really nice how closely it fits to the arm and it just feels like it's floating without pinching or being too bulky. I love that they continued the sequin detail down onto the train. Obviously, every single one of those was placed by hand. Also, I don't want to neglect the headpiece. This whole thing, this is the first fairy godmother for sure. Easier to believe this was made by magic than by human hands. Next we have Ashley Graham wearing Harris Reed. This is a defying gravity conundrum. I'd be stressed if I was commissioned to make this. There are no straps. The chest is floating, the arms are floating perfectly, the hips are popping out, the bottom has this big bell flare. From far away, I was willing to put this in fairy godmother, but from a technical aspect, this is a notoriously challenging thing about working with satin. The shine makes it so that it will betray every single little pucker and dimple and make it really easy to spot. You can see all the puckering happening in the corset area, and this can be for so many reasons, like the fabric wasn't fit perfectly, we didn't use the right structural interfacing or support to help it lie flat, even down to like your sewing needle wasn't sharp enough and so it was tugging the fabric a little bit every time it punctured. There's also like a bit of puckering over here on the side, and I don't know, like the bow of the hip is also just like not smooth enough. 30-minute timer. Ashley Park. Okay, last night when I went through these, it was really interesting because somehow I got in the flow of scrolling upwards on Vogue.com, and by doing so, I ended up with an interesting side benefit, which is I couldn't tell who was wearing the item until I got to the head. I feel like that was a good way to actually fairly judge the garment before I get influenced by who's wearing it, and with this one, even at the bottom, I was scared. It's too close to protective fruit mesh for comfort. Of course it is well fitted. It also looks like it's a stretch material, so it's a little bit easier to get all the curves right. This hurts, but I think this one is breaking the ice. It is our first past the seam ripper. At the top of the stairs, we find Ava Max. Instantly, Snow Queen. Those are the words that just come to mind. I need to zoom in. The pearl accents at the hip, on the sleeve, at the neckline, cascading down on this little like flipped over shawl in the middle. And then on top of that, the bonnet, also more pearls. For the amount of fabric that's on here, it doesn't feel heavy. It doesn't feel too bundled. It's very much the cold never bothered me anyway. She looks like she came from the Arctic and she's immune to frostbite. And I think this is fairy godmother. Okay, Bad Bunny in Jacquemus. I believe the backside of it is also open, which is a very cool tailoring detail. The suit itself, I like it. There's an interesting thing going on where the shoulders are exaggerated, but in a way that still looks very fitted and complementary to his shape. I think it's very nicely tailored. I mean, it's undeniable the amount of work that would go into creating fabric flowers like this. This train is like at least 5-6 meters long, not giving enough of emerge from transformation. It's going in 30-minute timer. Billie Eilish. She's wearing Simone Rocha. I don't know if I'm getting messed up from in my head comparing this to what it was like last year for her, which was great. I'm getting a little delulu. I'm thinking to myself, oh, like if I thrifted a whole bunch of black items and tried to layer them, maybe I could get somewhere in this ballpark. I'm not proud of this thought because I actually do love Simone Rocha, but delusions of DIY. Brian Tyree Henry. Wow! I'm trying to figure out what the material for this giant coat. On the edges, it looks like it is a lace, but it's been cut and layered to heaven to achieve this level of volume and pomp. That is a lot of gathering. That is a lot of black thread. He looks regal, but not bogged down by weight, which I think is quite an accomplishment. To me, it's Fairy Godmother. Next is Cara Delevingne in Karl Lagerfeld. Always appreciate the pose that can really show off the garment. It's like a white shirt with a cape, bat wing situation, and then the pants. The pants is the part that gives me some delusional thoughts. I don't know, it's like I thrifted a pair of black skinnies and I was like, I'm gonna use these to turn them into hot pants, and then someone was like, wait, Wendy, like make sure you conserve and try to use all the fabric, and I was like, oh, okay. The legs that I chopped off are now part of this outfit. I can see the mind trickery that would lead me to believe I could make this. Cardi B in Chen Peng's studio. I think she had 3 looks, but I'm just gonna focus on the one that hit the red carpet. This highlights a few more themes. We're gonna see a lot of leather gloves, again with the white collar, black tie, and then with this black patent pleather or leather, I don't know which one. I didn't even notice this last night, but it's like fully quilted on the skirt. If you've never worked with leather or pleather, regardless, both of them are uniquely difficult materials because they don't self-heal. When you sew with a knit or like a cotton weave, every time you puncture with the needle so that the threads can intertwine and sew things together, if you were to ever remove the thread, you could kind of massage it and it would look like as if you never punctured it. But with leather and pleather, the hole is forever. And so if you're aiming for perfection, as soon as you make a mistake on something like all this quilting, all the straight lines, like you would have to start over or find some weird way to cover it up. And so in that regard, this is a lot of work. The flowers are poppin'. Cardi B, you gave us Fairy Godmother. Thank you. Okay, we have Doja Cat and Oscar de la Renta. The reference she's touching on relates to Carl's cat, show pet. Upon initial review, this style of dress is not anything too outlandish that we haven't seen before, but the areas where it changes my mind a little on sewing technique is definitely with the train. You can see how it starts out with like a little bit of the fur. I don't know if it's for real. It gradiates into like a dense shag rug by the end. It's like the polyjuice potion was not strong enough, so we ended up with this mixture of human and cat, which is not to say that it's not good. I'm just saying that's kind of the inspo hybrid. And I will say it's very easy for cat ears to look costumey. It's like, I'm a mouse, duh. Given that, I'm impressed that the design manages to still look high fashion. 30-minute timer. Dua Lipa is making her way up the stairs. She's wearing vintage Chanel. I think this is a bridal look that closed one of Carl's shows, and so it's all tweed. The fit of everything is amazing. I think this twisted trim along the neckline and everything would have had to be done by hand, and then I actually think the fringe at the bottom is really clean. Anything in your house like curtains or fringe that grazes the ground, it's just like lint collection zone. So these look good. It has pockets, which we always appreciate because the temptation is strong when you're sewing to just skip the pockets altogether. Perhaps because there's been so much like headpiece or train or shawl going on, it's not quite Fairy Godmother. Next is Elle Fanning and Vivienne Westwood. One of the very few, if not only, guests that featured real flowers, but because they are daisies, which is just like a very common garden flower, I don't know, I'm getting a little delusional with this one. I'm thinking, oh, like maybe I can thrift like a white lace tablecloth and bind it around my boobs and put together a daisy bouquet. Sorry, I think this is delusions of DIY. Emily Blunt is next. And then when I zoom in, there are some details that make me a little sad. I wish the sleeves were fitted to her just a little bit nicer. Lace, I don't know, maybe personal taste. I just love it when it's really resting on the flesh. And then this front collar area is where a lot of the tailoring work comes into play when you're making a shirt. But then with the flower and the bow, it's almost like it just hides all the hard work with a little boop. It also reminds me of Chanel packaging more than Chanel product. I don't know. With this one, I also feel a little bit of delusions of DIY. I think to myself, lace top, black pants, slap on the flower, done deal. Emma Chamberlain. This is Miu Miu. The layer underneath, it reminds me of like you're making the dance costume for your kid's jazz show. I thought like embossed shine, I don't know, it doesn't feel expensive. There's also like this frayed hem, which I think is intentional from Miu Miu, but it's not really hitting the mark for me. And then something about this top and bottom, in my head, I can hear the voice being like,
watch me turn this trench coat into a two-piece dress.
This is Delusions of DIY. Coming up next is Florence Pugh. This is exactly what people are talking about when they say things like, sewing is my cardio. If you took before and after photos of your bicep working on this dress, you would definitely see some gains. The part that makes me hurt is this upper half. There's this massive gaping between the fabric and the body, which honestly gives me like a little bit of secondhand stress. The satin, once again, is being unforgiving, crumpling and rumpling in different parts and just like not looking as expensive as it could. This one, especially with that headdress, had potential to reach Fairy Godmother, but I'm putting it in 30-minute timer. Gigi Hadid in Givenchy. The well-fitted corset, I think it deserves respect. I think this like splaying, draping action from the hip is really pretty. I still think it's not enough to make it out of fashion school fundamentals, so I'm gonna keep it there. Glenn Close. I can't even imagine how heavy this train is to bring around because I am even tired doing the laundry with my own queen size bed sheets, and this is like at least California king bed. It's always surprising how much yardage goes into creating a gathered ruffle like that. I really want to put this in Fairy Godmother. However, I don't think a dress that looks like this could emerge from a sparkly transformation. It's maybe just like a little bit too straightforward. Gwendolyn Christie. Oh no. In my head, I can hear like no sew challenge, making a dress from a piece of fabric. I feel like it would only take a few pokes of the seam ripper to restore this fabric to its full original. I feel bad, but I don't think this is a sufficient flex of anyone's actual sewing skills. It's going in seam ripper. Okay, Halle Bailey in Gucci. If you told me her shawl was some kind of rare seaweed that formed in the ocean and could be like pulled out and worn as a garment, I believe you. The dress also looks like it's floating and being held up by just this necklace alone. That little ruffled edge, that is so much sewing detail with like a shimmery thread. It's like all the props that you deserve for cutting and layering and ruffling fabric, but on top of that, adding decorative trim. Fairy Godmother, I'm giving it to you. Jack Harlow, I think he's wearing Tommy Hilfiger. I think I can see where this was going, but the fit is poor. It looks like a size too small for him everywhere. Tweed can be difficult to work with, like I mentioned, because it has very little stretch, but on top of that, it also is a very obvious and clear grid. So as soon as the fabric is tugging ever so slightly in the wrong way, it's obvious, and I feel like I see a lot of that in his front placket, in the front of the pants. This fabric is a lovely shade of navy, but seam ripper. Janelle Monáe. It's a nod to Choupette the cat, but now in bag form, which is really cute. For once, it has been a little bit harder for her to stand out because she is often in black and white, but on this red carpet, a lot of other people did black and white. This is Thom Browne. When you zoom in, there's loads and loads of little white flowers, and then on top of that, even the black trim is loads and loads of black little glistening flowers. The face is selling it. This is Fairy Godmother. Oh my gosh. I genuinely didn't know what to think. So thankfully, I have categorized this as a sewing difficulty challenge. And when we're talking sewing difficulty, guys, it's Fairy Godmother. If Jared Leto had a wand waving around him and he emerged looking like this cat, I'd call it magic. I looked up pictures of Choupette and like even the little nose detail is correct. I think like the blue eyes actually are quite good. And even from owning our own cat Sagua, I actually feel like that little cuteness of the paws that makes you just want to pet them like this is very on the dot. I actually wish he committed to the bit and like kept the head thing on the whole time so no one knew who it was. Fairy Godmother. Next is Jenny Kim wearing Chanel. Blinks, please do not come for me. But similar to the Emily Blunt situation, it looks more like Chanel packaging than product. And I don't know, it's her first Met Gala. I wish they had given her something very grand. This one is Delusions of DIY. It's like I deconstructed a Chanel paper bag into this. Jenny Ortega in Thom Browne. I think it was a strong night for Thom Browne. Something that needs a little zooming in to fully appreciate. There's so many details. I I'm just gonna start with this snaking gold chain around everything, hand done. And then every once in a while they stick in a pearl. I love that variation. This little bow in the front is not only the white shirt, black tie, but with also the little flower in the center. And then even varying it black and white. I don't know, that's a detail I really like. When you zoom in, especially at the edges, you can see that it's rows and rows of fine mesh or tulle, and it's sewn in to create this striped textured effect. And a normal trip to the fashion store does not usually get you this type of fabric. Fairy godmother, godfather for Tom Brown, for sure. Took me a whole second to even realize who this was. Jessica Chastain. She just looks so different in the blonde. If the gloves aren't fitted just right, there's just this like little bit of gathering and pinching along the way that makes the arm look segmented in a way that's not too nice. And then for some reason creates this optical illusion where this back arm of hers looks like it's like teeny tiny compared to the front arm. There's a weird visual trick going on that is not turning out well. I think it's fair that it's fashion school fundamentals and not anything above or below that. Now it's Karlie Kloss. She's repping the pearls. The print design on her top and across the hips, it kind of reminds me of when like something is in your house but it's on a windowsill and it's been like sitting in the sun for too long, but then there's parts of it that are blocked from the sun, so then when you finally take it out of the sunlight and look at it, parts of it are like really bleached and then parts of it are untouched. This is more of a textiles print challenge than it is a sewing conundrum, and I don't feel like this is fancy enough for the Met Gala. I don't know. This is seam ripper. I'm sorry. Ki Hui Kwan, he's repping pinstripe suiting, very Carl. Also like the fingerless leather gloves. Sunglasses are a Carl shape. The suit is like not the most perfect fit on him and maybe made even more difficult by it being pinstripe, because now there's like literal guidelines printed on the fabric to help your eye see how clean everything is sewn. Sometimes I actually dread sewing material that has like really obvious lines, because then anything I do that's a bit off is going to become more obvious. I feel bad, but because maybe I've seen one too many pinstripe suits at the thrift store, it is a little bit delusions of DIY. Some aspect of this feels like a Carl costume instead of like its own finished fashion look. Kiki Palmer, she's wearing Sergio Hudson. This is another case where I just have to give props to how cleanly the tweed is being treated. Utterly sculpted and molded to her body. There's just like not a fold in sight. It's so smooth. And the shawl, wonderful coordinating colors with the tweed. The fact that it still holds its own even when her arm is taken out of it. This is beautiful. This is hard work. This is sleek. I'm putting it in 30-minute timer. This is Kendall Jenner in Marc Jacobs. I don't feel like I have a lot to say about this. This is just really, there's something about this that makes me feel like the assignment was you can only use these two sequin materials to make the entire outfit. Obviously got a lot of skill going into it because it fits her amazingly, but I just think past the seam rip. Okay, Kim Kardashian, kind of like Amanda Seyfried. We've got like the string of beads. This time it is pearls. The draping at the sleeve I actually think is really beautiful in this kind of ethereal floating way. The shapewear in the middle maybe lacks a little bit of the pizzazz that I expect at the Met Gala. I feel like this could go a lot of different ways. I'm not gonna overthink it. I'm gonna put it in 30-minute timer. Kristen Stewart, this is a cool suit. The gentle turn of the lapels is really nice and clean, and I love that little chain detail on one of the lapels. The pants, or like maybe the way she's posing, they just look a little bulky and like not perfectly tailored, and then they cuff in like a little bit of a pinching way. So I'd say like the idea was interesting, but the execution was not flawless. I'm putting it in fashion school fundamentals. Rounding out the Kardashian-Jenner clan is Kylie Jenner. This is Heider Ackerman. The only thing I found out about this dress that I thought was cool is that I think this thing around her wrists is the train, and so there's an option to like have it out as the train or to have it folded up for a little bit easier mobility. I'm just a fan of a little engineering meets sewing. Everything looks clean, smooth, fashion school fundamentals. Lil Nas X. So he's wearing Dior. I guess like I don't really technically have a lot of sewing to talk about here because I think he's only wearing one garment. When it comes to the one garment, I actually feel like it could have been executed in an even smoother, streamlined way. Lily Collins. From the front, I am not too crazy about this. I think mixing tulle is very risky. The back side of it has Carl spelt out on the train. It looks kind of like that iron-on rhinestone vibe. I'm gonna put this one in fashion school. It's like trying to make a statement, but I can't quite tell what the statement is. Lily James, whoo! Whether this is leather or pleather, typically there isn't like a ton of give, and so you do have to get the fit quite right, which I think they did. I think the chest looks very well fitted. The flower is nice. I don't know why there's a belt. I don't feel like that was necessary, but then underneath, I'm gonna give also a lot of points to this hexagonal, triangular shirring detail. This is a lot of work, and if you like get one ever so slightly misaligned, you start to run off track, and then the whole thing will get like a little skewed. I also love the way the shirring just transitions itself into a pleated skirt that just like flares out like crazy. Even though it's all leather, it doesn't feel like it's bogging her down. It doesn't look sweaty, which is sometimes a feeling that looking at leather items just gives me. It's 30-minute timer. Next up we have Lizzo, and she is definitely nodding to the pearls. I think the pearl and chain treatment on her gloves is actually really a fun accessory. Maybe because all the pearls are that perfectly circular style, it really treads the line between like Mardi Gras beads and like fine pearl of the sea. And like I mentioned with whenever you do vertical striping, it really betrays how perfectly everything is done, and from the way they're kind of like zigging and zagging down the front, it does not look magical. I don't want to, I love Lizzo, but I'm gonna give it delusions of DIY. Margot Robbie in Chanel. Why do they keep robbing this woman? This is seam ripper. Not a single sewing technique here is doing the most. The draping across the chest, it doesn't feel super flattering. The chaining detail along the bodice, placement of it, I don't like. And then on top of that, they had to like dangle one more sash in front. And then the bottom is just literally a black dress that cascades. Margot deserves better. Next up, we have Michaela Cole, who I think is also one of the co-chairs for this year. In my head, I always have like a heightened expectation of what the co-chairs should wear, because I'm like, you've had Met Gala on the mind for like months, years, I don't even know how long. They should have enough time to get it together, and get it together is this. If you ask me to make this, my first thought would be, I'm really stressed about how I'm going to attach all these things to this very fine fabric without tearing little rips, holes. All of these jewels have like little snags and chains. Oh my gosh, it's like a very, very high degree of attention to care, attention to detail. Not a single inch of her is overlooked. It just makes me feel like no expense was spared. This is Fairy Godmother. Michelle Yeoh is here. She's featuring the black and white. I think this is fashion school fundamentals. There's nothing about it that looks like extremely strenuous. Mindy Kaling, okay, it's delicate and structured and playful and mature all at once. The beading job on these flowers, so nice. I can't even imagine how long that would take. Love the structure that is making the strapless effect happen, very ethereal. And then this extra little detail of adding the feathery fringe on the underside is so appreciated. I hate it when you just look at a blank lining with nothing going on. It's so close. I'm almost gonna give it Fairy Godmother. Maybe if there was like a headpiece. Really appreciate the craftsmanship in this one. Next up we have Olivia Rodrigo. She's got the black and white. She was also with Tom Brown. I feel like this is the one that's least obviously Tom Brown because it didn't have any of this signature little striped color accents. My friend last night described this as like the dress started going through the shredder, and then at the last minute it was like, oh, the flowers, like yanked it out of the shredder. This is delusions of DIY. It's just like lots of black and white string and some flowers. Oh man, this one with Olivia Wilde, I don't even know what to think. I think there's like a picture of it from the side and it's like worse. This is straight to the seam ripper, and I feel bad because I know this is a lot of embroidery detail, but the payoff is insufficient. Pedro Pascal, he dared to show up in shorts, and this is like a really bright red Valentino. This one to me is squarely in fashion school fundamentals. It's got like a clean cut jacket, a dress shirt. Individually, they are all standard items of clothing that you might expect to sew as part of like a technical exam or something like that. Quinta Brunson is next. I do feel like this dress is like giving me more questions than answers. These starburst details are lovely. I just don't get why they were buried under this one thin layer of black tulle. It also looks like it hurts, like it's yanking down on the neck. This is an intrusive thought. You think to yourself, oh, if I sew the black tulle to the pink, that way they like won't get separated while we're out and mobile. What actually happens is it looks all bunched up and strange at the end instead of having that like trailing after you train type of look. This one is Seam Ripper. I just think the intrusive thoughts won in this one. Rihanna and A$AP Rocky. This is a ton of work, and for the volume of action going on top, I think it's incredible that she looks cozy instead of buried. It's subtle, but she also has the fingerless gloves. It's a little bit Abominable Snowman. It's also a little bit like Thumper emerges from the flower bed. You know what? For this overall look, it's very Godmother. Next up we have the Elbas, Sabrina and Idris. Oh, this is clean. The fold down up here at the chest, so clean. The waist shaping, clean. You might be mistaken into thinking that her dress is just full of like circular rhinestone patterns, but actually every single one has a hole inside, and that is a lot of work. It's like bedazzled grommets. I think the sculpture of it is really fun and playful and complements the sleekness of the top. And then for Idris, this front part, whew, just like falls like a waterfall. So smooth. They were really close to making it out of this section, but I'm putting them in Fashion School Fundamentals. Wow. And apparently this is his own label, Sean John, which I love. Speaking from personal experience, there's something so nice about being able to wear your own creation. I mean, of course he didn't sew this, but wearing something from his own business, his own label. When you zoom in, this cape thing is like a big puffer coat, so then every layer has to be sewn and stuffed with batting to give it the puff. Puff Daddy. The black flower detailing is everywhere across it. It is lovely. I think this silver studding thing on his jacket is sick. It has a texture that is both regal but also kind of like a cool moto jacket type of thing. Love the cummerbund, love the fit of everything. Fairy Godmother transformation. Sina Lu is up next. We share the same last name. I think I recently found out that we're like the 4th most popular Chinese last name, so there's a lot of us. A lot of effort definitely went into all this satin pleating that is happening across the front, and then like you can see a little bit of it brought into the lapel. I think that's like a nice little continuity move, but I'm not crazy about how neat the satin pleating is. Again, satin can be so unforgiving because of the shine, and so any little wrinkle, unevenness, light just catches it. I wish the black glove was like a really like a sleek glove instead of this more bulky style, and then with the wrinkled leather as well. I'm gonna put this in Fashion School Fundamentals. I think there were a lot of interesting techniques and ideas that went into this, but the execution was not impeccable enough. Stephanie Shu is next. This is maybe the most literally we've seen a collar like morph and melt into a dress. Once again, the sequins, the work is there. It's working. We start out with just like a little bit of sprinkling, and then down into a rainfall, and then into a torrent. Some of my nitpicks is the neck here doesn't seem to fit quite right. You can see some tugging on the mesh, like as if it's not laying too well. I also think the sleeves, it feels a little heavy. Maybe it would have been cool to like bring back the white suiting or something there. So for this, I'm also giving Fashion School Fundamentals. Sydney Sweeney is in Miu Miu. The black bow on the bottom of her dress matches the bow on top of her head, but oh, the bow on the dress I think is like my main struggle. It's like this was some sort of weird solution for the fact that the dress was too long for her, and they were like, oh, I know if we just like hike it up at your knees and tie it into a knot, it'll be hard for you to walk and it will look awkward. The sequin details obviously are lovely, but this black bow at the knees is ultra distracting. I think seam rip, and maybe like just that black bow. Tiana Taylor is next, also Tom Brown. This is also tweed, and just like the more you zoom in to these hip cutouts, the more you're like, wow, there's just not a millimeter of gaping anywhere. The fit is so good. The shoulders are fierce. I love this crisscross stitching detail that helps to show off the nice shape at the shoulders. Again, an outfit that is not smartphone friendly, but I don't know, man. I feel like it's worth it with all this grommeting on the side and the lace up. This train is so clean, and I love the little nod to Tom Brown that you can see peeking through in the lining. There is not a single seam out of place, fairy godmother status. And because there's no Zendaya, we're ending on the letter Y. We've got Young Miami. What would make this hard to sew? the floating structure up here. She's like sitting inside like a beautiful clamshell. The arms, they have to be fitted nicely like this. You wouldn't want them to be baggy when you've got such like a large piece up top. And similarly, you can see like the hips are also very fitted. It kind of makes me mad that the seams like flip-flop back and forth, so it looks a little bit like there's like a glitch going on. You can't really quite tell where it transitioned from this like hanging tool to like the party tool. I wish the pearls hung a little bit better, but it also might be due to the fact that she was like in motion when this photo was taken. I guess this is a nice note to end on. I think it's very godmother. Let me know what you guys think about all of these rankings. Some of you might have noticed that I've got this little number back here. This is something coming out in a video soon. It's satin, so all my imperfections will be obvious, but I actually am really proud with how it turned out. For sure, I know you guys have more thoughts about the looks. Please do drop them in the comments. I actually find it so entertaining to read them and see your opinions. This was kind of fun, but it was also a bit uncomfortable to rate people. It's not the usual around here. I mean, of course, like a certain level of healthy self-reflection and critique is important part of growing. I don't know how many of these rating videos I'll do, but thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you'll stay tuned for new videos coming up this month. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.